there's one down there.
Yeah, we probably won't use one since we're actually.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Check 1 2.
If we could, since it's just focused on the podium, if we could just have most of the stage, I guess. So, because I think he'll be walking around.
Yeah. Oh, you mean lit up?
Yeah, lit up, and then.
Okay. You want the screen still down?
No, probably
No?
not. We probably won't have it. And then it's like a camera, since it's just focused on the podium.
Yeah, well, you can zoom out. So you probably have to have somebody up here. Yeah, it must be frozen.
It's just kind
Okay.
of, it's a couple seconds
Yeah.
behind.
So you probably have to have somebody,
I mean, right there should be, if you could
Yeah.
zoom out a little bit.
yeah. Yeah. Is that good?
Maybe a little more.
Okay. That's just that button right there.
Yeah, all right, there.
Okay,
Perfect.
Check 1 2. Okay. And then so it's on mute. It's on mute now. The batteries are good. Yeah, it's on. There's a little switch right there on top. Till you get a green light, then it's on.
Okay.
Yeah, before your mic's on. More lights. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
You tested? Oh yeah, testing 1 2. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Sounds good.
Sounds real good.
Yeah, very clear.
All right, and then let's turn it off.
Oh, wow. This is kind of like, well, actually, y'all have checked it out. You got y'all. No, I'm talking about, they said, in Manhattan. Oh, okay, okay. We got y'all. That's our, and really, everything is making space, still is making space. That is very good. Okay. Yeah. Trying to pick up. Yeah, one of that. Yeah, kind of dirty stuff. Hey, over to the ball, over the ball. No, they don't. Maybe that is true. We don't have the real bad. Problem and they can be banned. But actually,
Oh, okay, perfect. I see it. Okay, thank you.
If everybody can settle in. Hello, everyone. My name is Ibrahim Shifji. I am the Vice President of the Muslim Student Association here at Kent State University. Today, on behalf of the Muslim Student Association and the Black Student Union, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you today one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Mahmoud is a former NBA player who mesmerized fans with his incredible skills. Before he was drafted 3rd overall, he played 2 seasons at Louisiana State University. Once in the NBA, he played for the Denver Nuggets, Sacramento Kings, and the Vancouver Grizzlies. And he was known for his sharpshooting abilities and his lightning fast moves. Mahmoud is a true inspiration, not just because of his incredible talent on the court, but also because of his unwavering commitment to his principles. In 1996, he made headlines when he refused to stand for the national anthem before games, citing his Islamic beliefs and the opposition to what he saw as oppression and injustice in the United States. Despite facing criticism and backlash, he stood firm in his convictions and continued to play with the same level of passion and skill. Off the court, Mahmoud has continued to be a powerful advocate for social justice and human rights, using his platform to raise awareness and bring attention to important issues. He has been involved in various charitable organizations and has worked tirelessly to promote equality and justice for all. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from Mahmoud himself. Please join me in welcoming him with a round of applause.
You have to turn this on. Hello. Can everyone hear me? First, I want to say, for those of you who are Muslim, assalamu alaikum. And for those of you who are not, may God's peace and blessings be upon you. Let me figure this out here. And let me begin. I think I have about an hour. So, and I've been told that there's going to be some question and answers. And so I'm going to leave some space for that. So I'm going to condense a lot of what I had to say. Let me thank the MSA for inviting me in the Black Student Union, for your generosity. I never take moments like this for granted. I really don't. I'm so grateful to God for being here, for you coming to listen to what I have to say. I'm just going to start from the beginning. You know, I've been associated with the cap before cap, the Steph before Steph was Steph. And I'm flattered every time I hear those terms because, you know, Stephen Curry is a phenomenal basketball player, but also he's a person that has shown himself to be one that is unflinching sometimes in just speaking his conscience. And Kaepernick also, with what he was able to accomplish on the football field, but also the position that he took and continues to take in the social and the political arena. So for me, I'm very flattered when I hear that. I was fortunate to play in the NBA for 9 years. I played 6 years with the Denver Nuggets, as he said before, 2 years with Sacramento, and I played 1 year with the Grizzlies when they were in Vancouver. And from there, I went on to play about 7 years overseas. And like most children growing up, I grew up in Mississippi, the South. I grew up in abject poverty. I grew up single parent home. My mother had the equivalent of an 8th grade education. And even though she wanted us to be educated, I always say this, that there's, a person can't give you what they don't have. And she wanted us, and she couldn't see past, for the most part, high school. Nobody in my family ever went to college. And so I didn't grow up in a family where there was critical thinking skills or where there was problem solving. And even though at a young age I could read very well, I could spell, I never took the time to develop critical thinking. I just memorized my way through school. But also at that early age, I never saw academics as a way out for me. Even the doctors and the lawyers that we knew, right, who lived in our neighborhood, as a child, you see the images of what success looks like. And on television, they normally are athletes, entertainers, musicians. They're the ones with the big houses. They're the ones with the money. And so I was no different as a child. I wanted that too, especially growing up the way I grew up. Many days waking up and having to do the syrup sandwiches, the sugar water, and all of that just to make it through. And so what child doesn't want more for themselves? I was no different in that regard. But these same doctors and lawyers had homes that looked like the ones we were in. So that was an image of success that I wanted for myself. And so I developed early because my mother had an 8th grade education and we didn't grow up in that type of family. I developed an inferiority complex. I looked at myself as being inadequate in the area of academics. And so I knew that at a young age, I had to find something that was going to set me apart, that was going to give me the chance to be able to make the type of money I wanted to make, to be able to take care of my family, to be able to take care of people. I say take care of people because I was always taught at an early age. I grew up as a Christian. I ended up becoming Muslim. And I was always taught the value of prayer. And I was always taught to pray for others more than you pray for yourself, because there's a greater chance that God is going to bless you, by doing so. And I was one of those children that I would stay up sometimes at 12. I found myself at 12 midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. Don't ask me why. I was just up and I would watch these commercials, these infomercials. And they would show children, starving, protruding bellies, sunken in eyes. And I would just cry. And I would cry like a baby. And I would always ask God, put me in a position to help these people someday. Right. And so that was a part of my motivation, not just want to get my mother and my family out of the ghetto, but also want to be in a position to help people someday. And so I knew also that as a young boy, I was gifted with natural athletic abilities, fast twitch muscles, fast. And I used to flirt with a lot of different sports. And to pass through all of that, I ended up gravitating to basketball. And it was only by the grace and mercy of God that I began to develop a strategy. And I'm talking about 9, 10 years old. And I talked to a lot of guys in the NBA. I played in the NBA for 9 years, as I said before. And sometimes we talk about our life growing up. And I tell them how I used to be when I was at 9 and 10. I said, I used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? And at that time, I knew for me, you're taught not to put all your marbles in one basket, but that's exactly what I did. And if I wouldn't have made it, my life would have been over. But my mindset was, man, this is all I have. Because again, I didn't see education as a way out for me. I said, man, if I don't make it in basketball, my life is over. So you imagine a 9, 10-year-old, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna start waking up every morning. And I don't know how people are training throughout the world, but I'm gonna train harder than everybody. And so I'm waking up and it's still dark outside. And my mother for years didn't know this is what I was doing. And so when I would see her, she had to be at work at 5 in the morning. So when I would see her leave, I'm getting up and it could literally be thundering and lightning outside. I'm talking about, it's dark. You think a tornado's about to fall out of the sky. I'm putting on my shoes like the sun is shining. I have so much tunnel vision. That's how bad I wanted it. But also for me, it was life and death. I had to make it. There was no way out. And I'm talking about coming home on numerous occasions. You know, I didn't grow up with nice wool warm-up suits and outfits. So I would wake up with shorts and a t-shirt. And I lived about 5 blocks from the beach. And so if you know anything about that wind, I heard y'all have a lot of wind chill out here. So you got that wind coming off that ocean, and it could be brutal in the winter. And so I would come home, and I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to do this, but I would come home and I would be frostbitten. I'm shaking because I'm working out in that weather. You start to sweat, and you're coming back home, and that sweat freezes on you. And I would turn on hot water to warm my hands up, and it would feel like needles in my hands. So this is something I was doing every single day. But also, having that strategy, my mind and my body was going through changes that I didn't have a name for. I was being ridiculed, made fun of. And it wasn't until 11th grade that I went to a doctor after numerous occasions, my mother taking me to the hospital and taking me to a doctor. They said, well, he has habits, they come and they go. And this is what I would tell people. What's wrong with you? Why can't you sit still? I have habits, they come and they go. This is what I would tell people. And so it wasn't until 11th grade that I was diagnosed as having Tourette syndrome. How many of you ever heard Tourette syndrome? All right, for those who didn't raise their hand, I'm assuming you didn't know or don't know, it's a neurological disorder. So it's like your mind and your body on 2 different wavelengths. And if they're not in agreement with each other, right, you can't go to the next thing until you finish that task. And so waking up in the morning, I would be in the bed and I'm trying to get out. And I'm always having to like psych myself up. All right, new day. You're not gonna hesitate unnecessarily. You're gonna be better. As soon as I move, it's like I have to lay back down, repeat that I don't know how many times. I get out the bed, it don't feel right. I have to sit back down. I have to get up, sit back down. Putting on my socks, take them off. Putting them, take them off. Shorts, take them off. Put them on, take them off. It may take me about 45 minutes to get out of the house. I'm on my way to the basketball court. And I'm leading, I'm taking you somewhere because like Bruce Lee say, for everything we do, there are carryovers to it. Socially, politically, your family. But I'm doing this and I'm on my way to the basketball court. It's about 4 blocks on the way to the beach. That's the one I wanted to go to the most. And on my way to the basketball court, I'm dribbling. Whatever I do, if it doesn't feel right, I mess up 2-3 times. And if I'm headed this way, I got to back up 10 steps in the direction that I came. And I got to, whatever I'm doing, I got to do the same thing with that. Whatever, I got to do the same right and left over and over again. And I'm backing up, going forward, backing up, going forward. That may take me about an hour to get to the basketball court. I get to the basketball court. I'm working out. I was always taught, train like you're going to play. Everything, not one speed, but you paying attention to details. You going at it. And I would imagine 2, 3, 4 different invisible people. They were always this close to the basketball. I'm trying to create space. Like with my imagination, they're always this close. And I'm trying to get my shot off. I'm going up, imagining somebody hit me. I'm doing this every single day. And I'm breathing hard. Every day I woke up, mostly every day I would have tears in my eyes. I'm crying. Not because I didn't love the game, because I'm saying to myself, I was scared. Because every day I was flirting with death. I don't know if you ever worked so hard and you're trying to get to that spot, but you have to finish the drill. And you can't catch your breath and it comes out at the last second. Tears are coming down your eyes and it terrified you. Like, man, you felt like that was it. That was literally almost every single day. So that's why for me, it was like a love and hate. I love it, but I was scared because every day could have been my last. But having Tourette's syndrome, I finished that hour and a half, 2 hours. Once I'm finished, that wasn't it. It's like Tourette's was this other person. And it was, oh, you're not finished. You got to play me now. And it would always give me a challenge. The one I talk about most is the all net. But sometimes it was hitting the rim and they got to come back to you. And so I'm already tired. I'm ready to go home. But it wouldn't let me go. So now it said you got to make 10 shots. None of them can hit rim. They have to be all net. The move that you make prior to making that shot could have no glitches in it. Or it don't count. I could have 9 in a row. All of them hit straight net. The 10th one skims the rim and goes in. I can't retake that 10th shot and say 10. I have to start back at 0. That's going to take probably another hour and a half. I'm on my way. I finished the drill. I'm on my way off the court. The ball don't feel right. Now, this is a court, but then there's grass. I still got to dribble. So I'm dribbling. It don't feel right. I back up. I find myself under the goal again. And your conscience is telling you, shoot it. And at the same time, it's like, I don't want to shoot it. Because I know if it don't feel right, it don't go in there right, I got to do that drill twice. And that happened to me every day. I had to develop a strategy. When I finished after the hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I did the 10-shot drill, all net, when it came out, I would take it and I would throw it towards my house. So now when I finally got it, and I'm dribbling towards the house, if I mess up and I bag up 10 steps, at least I'm not under the goal, right? So I can get home. This was every single day, every single day. But what happened was, at that age, little do you know, this is preparing you for something else. It's bigger. It's always bigger than the game. It's always bigger than basketball. Bruce Lee has this story about a protege. And then he said, look, let's go run 2 miles. And he said, I don't want to run, Bruce. He said, come on, man, let's run 2 miles. So he convinces him. So in the run, the dude is huffing and puffing, right? About a mile and a half in. Bruce said, let's run 3 more. He said, Bruce, I can't. I'm about to die. So Bruce casually said, well, die then. And just kept on running. Dude gets mad. In his anger, he runs. He finishes the race. And he says, the people around Bruce, he said, why were you so callous? Why were you so hard with this guy? He said, because once you give up on yourself, there are carryovers. You start giving up on your business. You start giving up on your relationships. You start giving up on. So when I was doing all of that at that age, I didn't realize at that time, later you realize, like, man, God, you prepared me for something. It's just like growing up in this country being Black, right? You automatically, we're taught, unfortunately, to judge people by the pigmentation of their skin. This is the way we're taught. Not that this is the only place where racism exists, but it's very lethal here in this country. And so like a lot of people that come from Africa, a lot of people that come from Germany or France, they don't identify themselves as a color. So who are you? German. We say, who are you? Black. We don't identify with a nation or a color. I mean, a nation or a culture or a tribe, right? And so how many minutes I got? How many minutes I've been up here? Okay, I'm just trying to. Okay, I'm just trying to. So I don't want to lose my train of thought. And if I do, so be it. I'm gonna just keep on rolling. What was the last thing I said? See if y'all were listening. See, this is supposed to be a college. I do this every time, everywhere I go to test the audience. What was the last thing I said? Or too many people talking? Let's try it. Thank you. Okay. I can't remember. But anyway, as I'm going through this, right? And I'm jump a little bit. As I'm going through all of this training, and I'm sending myself through these life and death situations, like literally life and death. I'm being prepared for something else. I know most of you have heard of Michael Jordan, right? If not everybody in this room. I'm about 5'11" and a half. I'm not 6'1". They list me as 6'1". For years, I would claim 6'1". But after my career was over and I looked back and I saw what God blessed me to be able to do, I said, well, it's more impressive to say you did it at 5'11" and a half than 6'1". So I say I'm 5'11" and a half. And that's my real height. So as I'm going through this, I go through junior high, high school. I'm breaking records at this age. I always played up. I always played against older guys. And I'm invited to this basketball camp that I almost missed because the state of Mississippi had a rule that, and we were poor. I was invited, I missed the camp, I think in South Carolina. It was a prestigious camp at the time. I can't remember the name of it. But someone that was in my neighborhood caught wind that I was also invited to a camp at Princeton, New Jersey, the Nike camp. And I wasn't receiving my letters because the letters were coming to the school and the coaches were keeping my letters. Like they kept a lot of people's letters historically, I came to find out. And they would only give you, they give you few of them, but they give you most of the letters of the schools in Mississippi because that's where they wanted you to go. And I caught wind of it and I got mad, and I was non-confrontational at the time. I just wanted to play, man, do what I was that person. I wouldn't raise my hand in class. I don't want you to ask me no questions. I'm just memorizing my way through school. This was just a transition for me to get to the NBA. That was it. And so I was told they wanted to, of course they pay your way to go to New Jersey. But the state of Mississippi had a rule that you had to pay your own way, or your high school eligibility, you would be threatening your high school eligibility. We didn't have the money. So a doctor named Dr. Dunn, right, he put money into my mother's account. Well, she had to pay for it. After she paid for it, the state of Mississippi also told me that I can't bring back paraphernalia that I paid for. So I almost missed this opportunity I'm about to tell you about that changed my life. I'm at the Princeton camp, 110 of the top players in the nation. There was a scout there that he had never given anyone a 5. He was the toughest scout in history at that time. 2 years in a row, I'm going in my 11th grade, going to my 12th grade year. He gave me a 5. Well, that first year, I believe, I'm thinking it was first and not the second, Michael Jordan was there. And we were all sitting in the stands. And I'm on the bottom bleacher. I'm about 140-some pounds, 50 pounds. And he's so close I can reach out and touch him. And the whole time I've never seen a specimen like that. Man, this man he was so cut up, and he was black and he had lotion on. And so you could see the fibers, right? And you could see just cut all up. I'm like, man, is this the type of body you're supposed to have on that next level? And out of all the people there, he looks at me, maybe because I'm small. He said, come on out, young fella. He said, I want to play you. He gave me the ball. He said, I want you to come at me with everything you have, and I'm going to try to stop you. And I remember getting the ball, and I gave him a jab step, and I took off. And he went forward, and I didn't go straight up because he would have had it, so I just kept running. I ran through the layup. I took something off of it, scored on him. The whole 110, whoa, went crazy. My insides, outwardly, I wasn't doing what they were doing. Because when you do something and people are watching, you don't want them to think that you were surprised. So I kind of walk like I do this all the time. And so when I walked off, I'm thinking it's over. So he gives me the ball again. He bounces in front of him. This time I land on both. I don't choose a pivot, but I'm staggered. So I'm like this. So I go through my legs, I cross him over, lay him up again. It comes out. He asks me for the ball. He tells me to go sit down. When I sat down, I can remember like yesterday, man, I'm having this conversation with myself. I'm coming from Mississippi. We didn't hear about people going to the league. You constantly hear, man, you poor. You got this condition. You're not smart. You're undersized. You don't got to change. And after I did it, I'm sitting here, man, I'm like, man, I just scored on Michael Jordan twice. And it was easy. I said, wait till I go back and tell my boys. And so what it did, it made me want to try. I mean, you thought I was training then? I took it to another level. Like, I want to feel this all the time. And so one thing led to another. I go to LSU. Dale Brown gives me the green light. I'm a freshman. My first game is 13-7. My second game is 21. He stops me at the door. He said, we need you to score. Third game's 48. Fourth game, I think, is 30-something. Fifth game, national televised game in Florida. Top SEC team. I file out 3 of their guards. I end up with 53. Didn't feel like it. I go into this room, journalists asking me questions. Now, this is where I'm about to shift. I'm answering their questions, but I get on the bus. And when I get on the bus, I'm looking out the window. Man, I start crying. I'm talking about crying like you'd have thought somebody killed my mother. And you'd have thought that, man, this is the most, you should be at your most happiest. Like, this is the closest to the NBA that you can be. You see the numbers you putting up? But I wasn't. I was scared because I felt this is too good to be true. Things like this don't happen to people like me. And it didn't dawn on me until years later where those thoughts were coming from. Because you would have thought, man, this dude is on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He's on the cover of all these magazines. I mean, he's so close to the NBA. He's got it going on. You see me, I'm shaking hands. It's me, I'm a people's person. I'm shaking hands, I smile. I was taught that this is just my character, right? I know how to talk. I could read, I could spell. Even though I don't know a lot of the words that I was spelling, I could spell well, but my comprehension skills were terrible. They put me in a remedial reading class at LSU in the corner somewhere on campus. People didn't know that. I had to go through the process of being able to define words, put things in context, extract the moral from the story, because they put me prior to going to LSU in this room and they had me reading. I was reading good. I said, yeah, I got them. And I could read my butt off. And they start, well, what does this mean? I don't know. What does this word mean? I don't know. He just kept going. Then I said, well, what do you got out of the story? I don't know. I just read the story. Couldn't tell him what it was. Because I was so used to what? Just memorizing my way through school. Just making a grade. So here it is. I'm in this remedial reading class. But prior to that, in junior high, they put me in a slow learning class because of Tourette syndrome. Not because I deserved it. So I didn't know. I mean, people didn't know that, they're looking at this and you would think, man, he's the closest that he could ever be. But I had so many insecurities. And then later on, I started thinking about it. I always talk about how our environment have a way of molding and shaping us. The information that we receive, the images that, no matter how tough you are, how strong you are, the more you consume, it will have an effect on you. I believe there's a book called Invisible Influences, and it talks about this. I read a lot, but and it talks about how, again, I'm always talking about how your environment has a way of molding and shaping who you become. And I began to think about, what were you watching then, Mahmoud, at that young age when you were coming up? How many of you heard of Sanford and Son, A Good Time? Right. I watched those television programs religiously, along with others. And those programs were set, our social and economic conditions are similar, right? So every day you're watching that program, you're rooting for them to get out the ghetto. And every time it seemed like they're about to make it out the ghetto, something happens to kick them right back in the ghetto. You're watching this day in and day out, day in and day out. So I'm like, wow, that's a part of why I feel the way I feel. This is why I feel like, something's gonna happen to me, right? This is too good to be true. I'm gonna be kicked right back in the ghetto. Yeah, you might be doing good now, but you're gonna end up just like Sanford and Son, just like James on Good Times, right back in the ghetto. And I remember after that 53 game, we got on the plane and that plane was like doing this, thundering. I said, oh, I knew it. And we land, and I was this close of contemplating going to Dale Brown and say, hey, coach, man, I love to play. I want to play. But I'm just one. I don't want to play on the road no more. I wonder if I can just play home game. But I knew he wasn't going to go for it. And you know, you taught, man, suck it up. Something's going to happen, it's going to happen. So you're talking to you, that self-talk. You got to motivate yourself. So I ended up getting through it playing. But I never could truly, all of those years, embrace it. This is why, after that first year of still holding up until this day, I think I 30.2 points a game as a freshman. This is why I didn't go to the NBA after that first year, because something in me was like, man, this is too good to be true. This is a fluke. I want to come back and see if I can do it again. Then I'd feel more comfortable going to the league. But while there on my second year, Dale Brown hands me a book that changed my life forever. And that was an autobiography of Malcolm X. And I never heard of who Malcolm was. And I began to read about his life, couldn't put it down. And I was fascinated, man, just how his mind worked, how he utilized analogies and rhetoric, you know, how strong he was and fearless, seemed not to care about what people think. And I was just the opposite. But I'm a competitor. I said, man, I want what he has. I want that, because I don't have that. I'm timid, right? I'm silent on things that I see, right, that I know that bothers me. I don't want to feel that. I don't like the way this feels. You're taught to survive, right, just to make it. You're not taught to live. You're taught to survive. Just get through it. And I said, I don't want to be that way. But I didn't know necessarily how to get there. But after reading his life, because, you know, I grew up in, again, Mississippi. I was born in 69, so I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And at that time, racism was like in your face. And you would see your mom, and you see your family members in private, boy, they bold, they talking loud and everything. In front of white people, their head would go down, their voices would get low. And as a child, you're seeing this. Your environment has a way of molding and shaping you. And you're seeing this stuff, and you start naturally doing the same old stuff, right? You can't look at a person, your voice lowers. And I said, man, I'm thankful to God that at that age, I don't like the way this feels. I don't. And it started to bother me. Even as a child, it was hard to go to sleep, right? My conscience was pricked, constantly. It's like there's a saying by Waldo Emerson, wherever you go, there you are. You can run from people, you can lie, but you can't lie to yourself. And so I started taking steps to learn how to tell people no, challenge people with certain ideas, see what that feels like when they tell you you sound crazy, dumb, stupid, or whatever, and sit with that discomfort, right? And the more I did it, like they tell you with anything, right? The more you practice, things get better. So the more I began to do that, I started to get stronger and stronger. So I go to Denver, I'm drafted 3, third pick, first round. Make a long story short, I embraced Islam. After embracing Islam, Ramadan came around. You know, we're encouraged to read the whole Quran for that month. I never read a book in my life and finished a book. And I didn't know that it wasn't obligatory. It was highly recommended, but I thought it was obligatory. So I finished the whole book during the month of Ramadan. But in finishing the book, also I began to have dialogue. And I noticed something, that the more I read, at some point you want to share this information. As you begin to share, you realize there's a lot of people that think similar. We're more alike and more common than we're different, irrespective of what our faith and our gender and our ethnicity is. So what that does, it eventually created a sense of confidence. And so the confidence caused me to do it more. And then the more I began to do it, what emerges out of that is you become a little bit more courageous, right? I start developing courage. And then I'm sitting there and I'm reading the Quran. I'm a Muslim now, and I'm reading and I'm being introduced to stuff, right? That I'd never been introduced to in my life. Because there's a verse in the Quran where Allah said, don't be like a donkey with books on your back. You got all that, donkey got all that information, but you're not putting it to use. So when I was in the league after I became a Muslim, Muslims are, I don't know how in the Christian world, but Muslims can be funny. We go into the lobby, I don't care whatever city I'm in, I'm getting my per diem, I'm walking, Assalamu alaikum, mama. I mean, all the way around, you turn around, hey, Assalamu alaikum, brother, how you doing? And so I'm so gung-ho, this is my first experience, right? I'm just so anxious. I finally found something that made sense to me, like literally 100%. I didn't have no questions about it. And at that time, all you had to do was have access to my room was tell me salam alaikum. And I'd invite you to the room if we didn't have to leave. And I started staying up 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And that was the best education I ever received because people had all of these different disciplines, whether it was political science, whether it was religion, right? Social sciences, you name it, history. And we sit up and they'd introduce me books that I never heard of before. And I would start because I was so eager now, I was thirsty. I felt I've been cheated. I was learning things I never learned in my whole years of not just in the beginning, but even high school and college. And they're giving me authors, the Noam Chomsky's, Gore Vidal's, the Neil Postman's, the Arundhati Roy's, the Howard Zinn's, the Kawanza Kunjufu's, the Amos N. Wilson's, the Jonathan Kozal's, the John Paul Gatto's. And I'm give it to me. And I'm just reading and having dialogue. After practice, I go to this bookstore, Salam. I would buy mostly everything he had, and I'm sitting in there and we're talking. Once the engine starts, it's almost impossible to slow it down. And you begin to think about things. And what did it for me, one of the things that did it for me is I'm in Mississippi, about 2.5 hours away. I read this book called The Prince of Slaves. Have you ever heard of it? Go get it. And it's talking about this guy who was enslaved in Natchez, Mississippi, which was 2.5 hours from me. And his father was a king of Timbuktu in Africa. And they knew each other, the guy who enslaved him, but he didn't know he had his son. And so for years, he had kept him in captivity. He eventually got married and went back. But during that time, I'm reading this. I'm like, wow, this is just 2.5 hours. And it made me think about, okay, what was happening in Timbuktu? What was a Timbuktu? So you go read about it. I say, wow, they had universities before the West had universities. Their number one commodity was books. They valued information like that. They were like a real live civilization at that time, advanced. But we were being taught something different. We were taught to look at things differently. That's when, man, it made me mad. Because I started thinking about, wow, I could have, statistically, I had a better chance at becoming a doctor or a lawyer than the NBA basketball player. Like literally. But I'm putting all my marbles in this thing. There are blessings in it. But also that stuff, you deprive a person. When you deny a person, I think one of the worst things you can do is deny a person a sense of their culture and who they are. Why? Because you always become susceptible to someone else's interpretation of who you are. And they don't always have your best interest at heart. And so for me, I began, I was on a quest. And that quest took me to things, and I started looking into social and political things, foreign policy and domestic policy. And those are the things that eventually led me to take the position of not standing for the American flag because of what I saw in many Black people and people of color as inherently racist for us. Other people's experience are their experiences, but you can't discount my own. And we're conditioned oftentimes as Black and people of color to, how do I say this? We're conditioned to discount not the wounds that's been inflicted upon us, right? To play it down because of the debt of America's gratitude to us. I heard people saying, well, America is what gave you the big bucks. This is why you were able to make the millions that you made. No, that's not true. If we want to follow that logic out a little bit more, there's been a 300 and something year advantage, right? That people in this country have had on free labor. Also not paying taxes on that labor, right? So if we're going to tell a story, let's tell a story, right? Anytime we talking about, so there's so much, the third stanza, right? The history of it, right? So I'm looking at all that. I said, I just can't do it. I'm not going to do it. And I remember being in the gym and this reporter came in and asked the question. the assistant general manager, you want to talk about it? I said, man, I'll talk to anybody. And at that time, I decided that I'm gonna live and die with a free conscience and a free soul, whether people like it or not. All right, this is the way it's gonna be. Right? Arundhati Roy has a quote, I love it. She says, once you see something, you can't unsee it. To be silent, to say nothing is just as political an act as speaking out. Either way, you're accountable. I said, well, shoot. If being silent about it gonna make me just as accountable as speaking out, I might as well go for broke. Let it all hang out. And this has been my policy. And so what happened, one thing led to another, and I know we got to ask questions. Yeah, one thing led to another, didn't stand for the flag, career was diminished, and so on and so forth. Let's start this because it might come up in question.
Gotcha. All right, let's give our speaker another round of applause, please. And we are now going to move into the Q&A session of the evening. So if you have a question, please raise your hand for me. I'll walk over to you with the mic and then we'll go from there. So do we have any questions to start? All right, so I'll get started with the first question. You talked a lot about work ethic and grit and everything you did to get to where you were and get to where you are now. So where do you think a lot of those lessons came from, right? You talked a little bit about your mom and different things of that nature, but what would you say the main focus of where those things came from?
You know, I was always taught, man, God gives you abilities. You know, again, I grew up as a Christian, so my grandmother, I credit this to my grandmother, uncle, and aunt in particular, that he gives you abilities. And kind of like George Washington Carver has a saying, no one has the right to come into this world and go out of it without leaving behind distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it. So we don't have the luxury with what God has given us to waste these abilities. That's one. Another thing, man, is just, I've always been a person, even at a young age. I think when we personalize what we want, like we individualize it, well, this is what I want. Did I want to be great as an individual? Yes. Did I want to have money? Yes. But mostly every decision that I made, mostly every motivation that I had something to do with somebody other than me. I would think about my mother and my family. I would think about helping people, right? And so I believe in the concept that if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others, or there's this saying that if you, the goal in life is to find your gift, the purpose in life is to give it away. And I think more comes back to you, because also when you're training and when you're giving yourself to something and you know that people are depending on you. So even at that age, I'm putting my family's weight on my back. Like, I gotta take care of my family. I want to be able to do this. It's different than if you was just thinking about yourself, because it's easy to give up and quit because nobody's depending on you. Right? Well, I can just quit. It don't matter. But that wasn't my focus. It was like, no, I got to take care of people. And so that's where it came from.
So it's interesting that you say that. So with you saying that you had the weight and stress of your family, I mean, a lot of people are dependent on you on your shoulders. How do you manage that, right? As college students, I'm sure a lot of us can understand that and kind of empathize with that a little bit, because I'm here carrying the burden of the weight of my family. So how would you recommend for any of us also doing that, to do that in a way that makes sense and that's feasible?
Hold on, say that one time.
So what advice do you have for anybody else carrying on the burden and the weight of their family?
The advice of carrying on the burden of the weight of their family? Mm-hmm. Look, I think there are pros and cons into it, right? Like I said before, I think having that approach makes you work harder. When you know that you're carrying that weight, I say embrace it, own it. I think we're social creatures, right? And we're here to benefit others, not just here to benefit ourselves. There's a concept in African philosophy called Ubuntu, right? Where this anthropologist created a game, put fruit in the basket, took it distance, told them, said, look, whoever can reach that fruit and they first could have it for themselves. And he thought that their selfish tendency was going to come to the fore, but instead they looked at each other, they grabbed each other's hands and they went. And he said, why did you do that? They said, Ubuntu. I said, what does this mean? It's an African philosophy. I am because we are. Right? How can I be happy when the rest of us are sad? Right? So I would say, never allow yourself to be desensitized. Even when we look at suffering nowadays, right? We've been so conditioned. And I talk about this a lot. Sometimes I'll do a skit. In the Muslim world, we have this saying when somebody goes through a calamity or they die, we say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. To God do we belong and to God should return, right? And so we hear about somebody dying or somebody struggling. And we say, oh man, my heart goes out to you. You know, send my best to your family. Or a person dies, oh my goodness, I pray that they're okay. Like within a minute, hey man, you want to go shoot some pool? We don't think about the long-term effects of these type of things, right? Like, okay, this person that died in their soul, were they the breadwinner of their family? If so, how many was in their family? How is that going to affect them, this loss, right? Because there's effects of these things. So there are generational effects also of being selfish as opposed to being collective, you know, and keeping us divided. And so the more we adopt this philosophy, this is just me, my humble opinion, the more we adopt this philosophy of thinking of others, because the society is always more important than the individual. You know, of course, we have to take care of ourselves, but the society is always more important. There's a saying that Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim, that verily God won't change the condition of a people until you first change what's in yourself. Well, he won't change your society until you change your societal self. So just like anything, the more that you can, whatever you focus on grows. So the more you focus on doing these things, like anything, it becomes a pattern and it becomes easier to do, right? And so I would say, keep those thoughts in your head. Make that the center of why you do what you do. Keep focusing on that. And I'm telling you, it comes back. It's amazing how when you give of yourself like that and you put in that work, and these are the stories you're constantly consuming and telling yourself, not the negative stories you can't do it, this and that. Because what you focus on grows. The more you do that, it becomes easier. And then you'll find people gravitate to you more. And it's easier then because now it's just not lip service. You know, you're combining both the communication of it and the action of it. Then people will come and they'll aid you more and you get more done that way.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
Where did you get the idea of converting to Islam?
Thank you. When I was at LSU, I was handed the autobiography of Malcolm. I went to Denver. I was still struggling with my faith, and I would ask questions. And this obviously isn't everyone's experience, but mostly every time I had a question with people in my family, they would give me two responses. You just got to believe and you can't question God. And that just was unsatisfactory to me. And so while in Denver, Islam came up in conversation with a friend of mine. We went to the masjid, came back with the Quran. He's across from me. I read 2-3 pages. I don't remember what I read, but I remember to this day it made me feel. And all the questions I had at that moment, just reading those verses, it was clear to me. It was 100%. And I remember telling him that my search is over. I'm gonna be a Muslim. And so I began to go to the masjid. And I was taught early through a lot of mentors, not just to read, but to engage the material, ask questions, dialogue with it, like having a conversation, you'll get more out of it. And so from that moment until now, at 53, and I'm oftentimes asked, what is it? Why? I said, from the moment I engaged it until now, it's never ceased to satisfy my curiosity nor answer my questions. So this is what did it for me and what continues to do it for me.
After your MBA career, what did you do at that?
I didn't understand.
What did you do after your MBA career, after your basketball career?
Actually, I have a documentary out on Showtime right now, and I speak about there was a period that I actually went dead broke. Yep, dead broke, and a lot of even my closest friends didn't even know, right? And so what happened was I started training, but also I started traveling and speaking, and the speaking continued. The training continued. And then one thing led to another. And I was able to hold on to some properties. And so I still have some of those left. And then one thing led to another, man, doors just continued to open. And then there was a big three, with, the big three with Ice Cube playing in that. So mostly what I've been doing, I have a book out. And the documentary is coming out, and there's a potential movie deal being talked about. And I have an idea for maybe a couple of other books to produce. And just constantly learning and traveling. You know, I love coming to these spaces because I find before, we were talking about this earlier, before and after, I love receiving information and I love sharing it. And so I find that I get a lot of my learning conversations I have prior to speaking and a lot of time after I speak. And I'm always trying to ask my audience, like, give me a list of books you think are fascinating for me to read, and I'll go and I'll take them and I'll read them right when I get to them. And so that enables me, because information is powerful. You know, we talk about ideas. Ideas is what I believe, honestly, what rules the world. You know, you can talk about nuclear war, chemical war, biological war, but none of that, you talk about capitalism, you can talk about whatever, none of that, slavery, right? They had to sell the idea, right, to people. So once you can convince people of something, it's easy to justify other things. So I think the most vital war is going to be fought on the battlefield of ideas. So for me, I'm constantly reading, constantly trying to expand my knowledge on so many different topics, whether it's politics, I mean, you name it, biology, I read anything you put in my hands. And then if I have something to say, I say it. And I don't think about, I stopped thinking a long time ago, you know, people have this idea, well, you got to know everything before, I want to know everything before I do something. Having that philosophy is going to almost assure you're not going to do anything because you'll never know everything. So for me, even if it's the slightest information that I have, I share it. And my philosophy is God will show me the rest. And it's been working. Yeah.
So I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as a Christian African-American male who grew up here in Manhattan, Kansas, there wasn't really a lot of diversity. And so now that I'm in college, I'm trying to increase my knowledge about African-American culture. And so do you have any books or documentaries or short stories that you recommend to me? I'm trying to increase my knowledge.
Ooh, yeah, there's a lot. I'll give you authors. You know, go check out Kwanzaa Kunjufu, go check out Amos N. Wilson. He's no longer living, but his information is still very much relevant. Randall Robinson has a book called The Debt, What America Owes to Blacks. Then he had a book right after that called The Reckoning, What Blacks Owe to Themselves. He had a book before that called Black Life. And then he has a book called Quitting America. You know, he worked in Congress for many years. He helped, I think, with the Amistad situation. He helped free Mandela. He had an organization called Trans Africa. And he worked within the system for so many years. And he ended up saying in Quitting America, this is his perspective, people have the right to disagree. He said he's come to the conclusion that America is incapable of change. So this is a person that has been in the center of the system for so many long. So he's a phenomenal writer. I would just, start on that. But if you catch me after, more authors will come to mind. Yeah, but those are some good ones, I think.
Yeah, thanks again for coming.
No, thank you.
Kind of keeping on that same book theme, thinking back to your first year of college when you said you were feeling a lot of that turmoil, what would be the 2 or 3 books that you would make yourself read back then that would help you ease your mind and kind of get your mind right?
I wasn't reading back then. The book that grabbed my attention in college was the Malcolm autobiography of Malcolm. I was literally just transitioning through LSU, just trying to get to the league. But since then, man, there's just been, like I said, a lot of books that I come across, whether it's self-help books. There's a book by Paul Tough called How Children Succeed. I'm just trying to think of, because you put me on the spot. Even Malcolm Gladwell, he has a book called David and Goliath. And in the book, he talks about how we perceive advantages and disadvantages, right? And I think that was a fascinating book. Yeah, you got me. Oh, there's a book, man, I give to a lot of agents, and they ended up giving it to a lot of NBA CEOs. Very small book, but very powerful. Because we live in a society with fast information. We want fast progress, right? All of that, fast food. But the book is called Chop Wood, Carry Water. It's by Joshua Metcalf. And it talks about falling in love with the process of becoming great. Phenomenal. It's very small, phenomenal book. He's giving it to these CEOs and they're like, wow. And it's stuff that you know, but when you hear these stories again and how they break it down, he said, man, the guy called me and said, thank you. He said, man, that book changed my life. So there's just so much out there, so much out there.
All right, after this question, we'll have 2 more questions from the back, and then we'll transition to the front where we have some insomnia cookies. Wait a minute, everybody. Sound good?
Yeah, thank you very much. A lot of kids in school want to grow up to be famous basketball players. What's your advice for them?
Well, I mean, I'm not one that's going to try to what's the word? Talk down on what they want to achieve. But like anything in Islam, it teaches us to look for the mizan, the balance. I do believe that if your heart is calling you towards something, follow your heart. Imam once told me, he said, look, when you follow your heart, there's a greater chance of succeeding. However, there's different ways to look at it. Will Smith says when you have an A option, don't have a B or C, right? Because it kind of leaves an exit route, and gives you a way out. You don't approach the A option the same as if though this is all I got, right? But at the same time too, it's not as wise because things could happen. So you sometimes want that B or C. Just know what you're up against, do your research. I think it's always safe to be multifaceted, pursue it if this is what you want, but also find other things because as human beings, we have the capacity to juggle more than one thing and to be really great at it. That history proves it. So many people have done it. That was one of my problems because I spent so much time just being consumed by basketball that I never learned, I truly learned a lot of other things. And so when the bottom dropped out, you panic, and things would have been different if I would have got those skill level in other things and that education and other things. I could understand real estate, or I could understand business, to where I could have something to fall back on. So I would just say, follow your heart, but at the same time, try to find other things that you're good at as well, that you love, and pursue it. And eventually, it'll all come together. It'll all come together because statistically, when I was coming out, I think it was like 1 in 800,000 that make it to the NBA. Now it's well over that because you got the overseas market. You got, so many people trying to play in the NBA. We're just talking about the NBA. Of course, there are other leagues, but statistically, you playing Russian roulette, trying to get, literally. One thing can happen. It could be a bad relationship, right? Injury. So that's what I would say about that.
Hello, thank you again for coming today.
Thank you.
Speaking with us. My question is about some of the burdens you felt that you carried at a young age, and I wanted to know if to this day do you still feel that you carry those burdens, or in what ways have they changed, in terms of your relationship with your family and wanting to help them?
Yeah, a great question. For me, for certain, the burdens have increased. I think as a human being, and I know this stuff sounds cliche, there's a saying, they asked the prophet, who's the best individual? He said, the one you benefit from the most, right? And as I said earlier, I think the society is more important than the individual. And there's so many issues to confront, right? Not just in this nation, just globally, right? To attach ourselves to be of benefit to people, right? So as long as I feel that there's oppression, as long as I feel that people are being brutalized and mistreated, I'm gonna always have that burden to try to make a difference. And even if it's just speaking, there's a saying that, articulate and use your voice, even if there's a sense that people won't change, right? Because we can't control that, but we can control ourselves and what we say and or do about it. There's a saying in Islam that when you see a wrong, change it with your hands. But if you can't change it with your hands, change it with your words or write about it. But if you can't do that, feel it in your heart, but know that that's the weakest of all faith. You know, but don't let it leave here because it can reverse back. So for me, as long as, and we'll always have these issues, it won't change. We'll always have people that are seeking justice, and we'll always have people that's trying to oppress people. That's the way it's been since the beginning of time. So as long as that exists, as long as I'm living, I'm gonna always carry that burden. Always.
Thank you again for coming.
Oh, thank you.
I was gonna ask, as someone who was willing to put it all on the line and stand for what they believed in and make a difference despite like losing it all in your childhood dream of making an MBA, what advice would you give to someone who strives to do something similar but might not be in the same position that you were in? And then the second part to the question is, as someone who wants to continue to grow as a person and keep learning, what advice would you give to try and to do those things? So what type of things would you do to help learn and grow as a person?
With the last question first, I would find something that you're interested in first, and I would gravitate to that, because the amazing things about reading, as I'm reading something that I'm interested in, somewhere in the book, the author is going to mention another author, and it's going to draw you to it. And then that author is going to mention another author. And there's going to be something in that book that, because the intersectionality of information, right? This is one thing that I've learned also, like reading books by Noam Chomsky on miseducation, and John Paul Gatto. He has a book called The Underground History of American Education. And he talks about how, you know, oftentimes in educational institutions, we're not connecting the dots, right? There's this compartmentalization of knowledge, right? You know, you learn this, but not this, right? Learn this, but not this. We don't see how can I take mathematics, right, and apply it to geography? How can I take this and apply it to this? So now that there's a whole, it makes sense. And we wonder why when we come up with ideas later on in life, man, I got a great business idea. But we can't finalize it because, right, we've been conditioned. Like in school, you could be in the zone. But what happens? The bell rings. You got to pack it and go to the next. You got to leave that off. But no, this is the best time to learn, when you're in the zone with something. And statistics have shown that when you study education, right? So I would say find something that you love, you know, and then watch how you end up building on it, and then things begin. That's what happened to me. Well, you know what? I'm reading like literally almost everything underneath the sun. You give it to them, I'm gonna read it. And it's just not reading I'm interested in it because I see how things come together after a while. And the other question you asked was,
despite not being able to do that big work, as someone who strives to be trying to make a difference in that same way, but might not have that same platform or want to start, continue to try and do that, bring that things, what type of advice would you give to try to make a difference just in their whole lives of people that they come to?
man, this is cliche, it's general, but what's that saying? The journey of a mile begins with one step. Like literally, man, we underestimate, ask me that again, because my mind is all over the place. I got so many ideas. Ask me that one more time.
Your whole life, what work to play the NBA, but in civilization, there were certain things you couldn't stand for. One of the risk, all of that, just the standing your belief, and you were able to make a difference in society, politically, and all different facets of life. As someone who might not be at that same level yet, but is striving,
Thank you. You know what? Associations are powerful. And I'm gonna keep going to my faith. And I know the same exists in Christianity, somewhere there are verses. But there's a saying where God says, be in the company of the righteous, right? And there's a reason why. They've done studies that if you're out of shape, hang around somebody in shape. If you're not smart, hang around smart people. If you want to be an activist, hang around activists. Why? There's a pattern in their conversations. There's a pattern that they live in their life, right? that created that caused them to be that. So the more you hang around those types of people, it eventually rubs off. So our associations are key. So if you want to be a social activist, if you want to become stronger in your communicative skills, read stuff, consume those things, practice on it, be around people that are doing those same things, because it eventually rubs off, right? And that's what did it for me. When my information changed, as they say about thinking, your thinking influences your behavior forms your character determines your fate. So the more you read something and the more you have dialogue, right? Just like everything. They did this study and they took these two guys on a trip. I talk about this book, Invisible Influences, where all these influences, we're being influenced whether we like it or not. We think a lot of the thoughts we have, they're original and they come from us, right? But there's so many things that's influencing how we see the world and how we think. And they took these people on a drive and they're having a conversation in the car. They're filming the whole way. When they get there, they say, look, put together this commercial, whatever commercial was. One of them put in the commercial, they had a dragon and balloons. Another person had palm trees. They said, well, I just thought about it. Little do they know, on the drive, they passed by palm trees. But it's like you and I talking, but like in my peripheral vision, I see it just for a slight second, but I don't focus on it. But just that amount of time of seeing that was enough to influence them to put it in to the commercial, but they thought that was their original idea, but it wasn't. So imagine the stuff we're consuming every single day, right? So I would just say, be in the company of those type, whatever you're trying to become, find that audience, right? Surround yourself in that audience. When I started reading books and having different conversations, it led me to making those types of decisions. But really those decisions wasn't made just then. Those decisions was made as a little black boy. And I didn't understand this until this brother, I had a podcast not too long ago. He said, Mahmoud, you talk about you weren't a critical thinker. He said, the fact that you was trying to think of angles and scenarios on the court, that's critical thinking. The fact that you were looking at, the other side of the track, how those neighborhoods looked and how yours looked and why. Whether you had the answer or not, that was critical thinking. You know what I mean? So I can keep running my mouth, but yeah, that stuff the decisions I made, literally, I was protesting internally before it actually came out publicly later on in my years. I just didn't know how to articulate it, but I didn't mean I wasn't feeling it, wasn't aware of it. And so it just took time for it to finally come out and become visible later on. Yeah.
All right. Unfortunately, our time for Q&A has expired, but let's give our speaker another round of applause. And also on behalf of the Black Student Union and the Muslim Student Association, we want to thank each and every single last one of you coming out. If you would like a picture, I ask that you please line up along that wall, have your camera phone ready, and then if you would like snacks, those will be out in front. Thank you for coming out.
Oh, okay, so like right here in the front?
Yeah, yes, okay, yeah, go ahead, tell them, yes, not.
Let me, I think there's a way to picture. I'll go just.
Awesome.
And then I'm gonna get a few pictures with you real quick before you leave. Oh, it's on. Then we'll take it, right? Whatever you think looks good. Get her in this picture too. Just that one. Okay, thank you, sir. All right. Picture.
What was the book you said about the institution?
Yeah, yeah. Chris said.
Yeah. I'll let you know about tomorrow. Right. Well, inspired many and yeah, many of us can think out of it. Yeah. It came when it's a lot better than looking at it. Yeah. How you doing? Good, good.
Is it on?
One. There you go. Sorry. Oh, no. Oh, and now you two times. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, so feel it for me. All right, there you go. Oh, man, 2 times. Thank you. One, oh, number 3. 1, 2, 3. Got a little Android action popping. All right, there we go. Thank you. Yeah. You're right. Actually, using a lot of stuff to do. 1, 2, 3. All right, there we go. Thank you. No problem. Very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Nice. All right, feel for me. All right, there you go, sir. Thank you. All right. 1, 2, 3. Hold it for it. 1, 2, 3. All right, round 10 and he met 1 2. Oh, I can't wait to send him the picture. His grandson, he maybe was a GA. Yeah. And his grandson, I appreciate it. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. All right, there you go. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. No, man. Athlete got it first. No, I wish you come and take it to our players. Like I told them he was better than Steph Curry. They looked like I was crazy. That's different. Yeah. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, there you go, sir. Oh, that's why everyone's like, you can't smile. I didn't smile when everybody's like, I got to do a smile. 1, 2, 3. All right, everybody. That's good. Appreciate it. Yeah. Nice meeting you.
You want to get in for a picture?
No, I'm away.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. You're an inspiration.
One, two, three. All right, you go, sir.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
One, two, three. Okay, and I'll send the A to help them. Sound good?
Thank you. What's that? Oh, thanks. Forgive us for our flaws.
1, 2, 3. There we go. All right, you go. Oh, you got it.
Oh, no, I met her.
Yeah. Oh, no, closer.
No.
Good. You do that one, then I do another one. That's good?
Thank you.
Oh. If I'm in T right there, in there, mentee, yes, sir. Hold on, they still want. Hold on, I need one for the leadership Instagram. Don't be embarrassed. All right. No problem.
You can sort of understand that's cool.
Move this way. There. One, two, three. There you go. Hold on. Doing good. 1, 2, 3. Another one. Out. There you go. No problem.
Nice to meet you. And I love the subject.
Oh, here?
Oh,
It feels more like,
Picture?
I've been growing up with
you want a picture, sir?
that I've been.
Go ahead. Ow. No, dear, go. Don't worry. Yeah. Oh, it's still on? Oh, okay.
Very important.
Thank you. Take it proper, why?
Chris, let's get it. Hello, you get it real quick? Oh, you got an actual. Let's do it.
Ow. Thank you.
You want your picture real quick? All right. Thank you.
Yes, you have. They didn't say it on the page. Did I say it on the page? My eye was red. I didn't. I didn't even see the whole day. I was if I tell you what was my head. This morning.
Oh, man. I get in Mississippi, man. I just. Yeah. I'll get to watch. You're gonna be here, gonna have no people to watch.
Do I look like my? I look like who am I looking? Olivia or am I shy? Am I looking shy? Should I look at you or I look at somewhere else? Yeah, I have around by 6:30. I have to. Which one? You want to take a picture with them? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
On outside door. It was part of but this whole room was packed out. It was a really good experience. Well, we had Lawrence Ross here. Donald and Lawrence Ross, he was here. Then we had Katie Stevens. Then we had Raylan Storm. The Raylan Storm, a lot more popular back in the day. She was probably back to the 80s, but she was the first black woman to really live. Long time, yeah. And she got it through. Yeah, literally. Yeah, she still has it. But she was one of the first people to advocate for it. She was a black woman, she advocated for it, and she really brought more attention to it. But she very hard. You know, they have innocent and all types of stuff. So it's not uncommon in the States for people to lift it down, but she got it back. Shoot, I'm gonna say the 70s or 80s, man. Long time ago. She was on the cover of Essence magazine. Yeah, so that was our lineup of speakers. Nice. Yeah, I don't know, just been sitting there listening. It was a good time, and then we actually, so we have, this is our forum hall. It's like a more like an auditorium movie theater type of space, but we have a ballroom upstairs that can seat roughly 1,000. So they were packing up the ballroom. Yeah. Oh, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Yeah, I saw you. One.
My mom would have loved that, sorry.
You're good. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I have a quick question for you. What time is the next reservation? 7. Okay, so we still got a little bit of buffer time.
Improv, so I do have to set up the music.
Oh, we don't do that. The union does.
Yeah, I
We're
know,
good.
so I don't think we have time.
No, we don't have to do anything.
Should I go for dinner?
Yeah, just let me know where, and then I'll meet you guys upstairs. Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, I'll meet you upstairs. All right, I'll see you few fellas.